This conference will now be recorded.
This is a training for COVID-19 mass vaccination clinic staff and volunteers for Lincoln County, Oregon. The intended audience for this training are people who are authorized by Lincoln County, Oregon to staff a COVID-19 vaccination clinic. This includes Lincoln County staff and volunteers, as well as staff and volunteers who are sponsored by one of our partnering agencies who have an affiliation agreement with us, which I will speak more about in following slides. This is also something that people who are considering whether they would like to staff a COVID-19 vaccination clinic, they can watch this video and see if they're interested in staffing, and this would be the same video they would end up watching anyway once they become authorized to staff the clinic. The purpose of this training is to prepare new clinic staff for their first shift, to improve the efficiency of clinic staffing, to prevent staffing, safety, and liability issues, and to prevent clinic delays and staff fatigue. This training is broken up into 3 sections. There's clinic orientation, clinic positions, shifts, and supports available, and then signing up for shifts. So the clinic orientation. On our YouTube channel, we have another video that is titled COVID-19 Vaccination Clinic Walkthrough. It describes the process someone would go through to sign up for the wait list, get access to scheduling their appointment, and then what that clinic day would look like for them for the mass vaccination clinic that is based in Newport at the Lincoln County Commons, or the fairgrounds is another term for it. This video introduces the messaging that we provide to clients, and it would be the same messaging that you would echo. We will have this link to the same video linked down in the summary of this video so that you could then watch that separate video. So who can staff the clinic? We have 3 types of categories of people who can staff the clinic. First are our unaffiliated volunteers. These are people who are not affiliated with another agency or with one of our groups like the Medical Reserve Corps or our CERT, which is Emergency Response Team. So these would be individuals who would have to go through the volunteer application process, the background check, and then the county training because you become official county staff. And then also this training, which you should be watching right now. All individuals who are unaffiliated volunteers with Lincoln County, they would be covered by our limited liability insurance for working that clinic. Then we have our affiliated volunteers and staff. These are people who are sponsored by an affiliate, so an agency that has an agreement with us that they have background checked and are providing liability insurance for this group of people, this list of people that they've provided to us. So your agency would need to have already submitted with us a affiliation agreement and then have your name listed on that agreement. So some of the agencies that we have these type of agreements with are Samaritan Health System, Oregon State University Extension, fire departments, Lincoln County School District. So ask your agency whether or not they have an affiliation agreement with us and whether your name's on it, or if you could get your name added. And then once that is submitted and we have that name, then you become part of our staff pool. And then we also have our Lincoln County staff. Our normal existing staff are eligible to work the clinic. They have already been background checked and they are covered by our normal Lincoln County liability insurance. As long as their supervisor has approved them to work the clinic, they can work it during their work hours or they could work it during their off-duty hours and they would still be covered by our insurance because they're working a Lincoln County event. It's just outside of their normal scope of work. So one of the common themes that you can see across these 3 groups is that every single person who's working in our mass vaccination clinic has to be background checked and has to be covered by liability insurance. This is a clinic, there's multiple people there, we're doing healthcare, has to be appropriately vetted and covered. So general expectations for our staff. We require our staff to follow all vaccine distribution and clinic protocols. So the vaccine distribution protocol is the Oregon vaccine sequence. And then locally, we also have the Lincoln County wait list, which I'll describe a little bit more about. And then one of our clinic protocols is that only authorized staff, people who are authorized by Lincoln County, can be working that clinic. Ensure client privacy as much as possible. This is a semi-public event in that it's a mass vaccination clinic, but we do everything that we can possibly do to make sure that we protect client identity and their information. Ensure safety of all clients and staff. Most positions are working in the area where they can be easily reached, where they can easily reach a operations manager or the clinical manager. And so most of you will just communicate any safety and security concerns to those two individuals. And we have a organizational chart in one of the later slides so you can see what positions report to whom. And then if there's a severe emergency, alert the emergency medical technician that is on site as one of the positions for the clinic, or call 911. Respect and accommodate diversity and all abilities. Note this is a mass vaccination clinic, and we are looking to make sure we vaccinate the most vulnerable individuals first. And so a lot of the clients that we have coming into the mass vaccination clinic are older adults, may have physical limitations, may have some cognitive limitations. And so it's important to be able to accommodate those diversity and abilities, and also ask for consent before just assuming that someone wants or need help. But being ready to assist as needed and as consented. And then be courteous to those who are frustrated and confused. It's a very different process than they've probably been in before. We have 30 to 45 or 32 to 42 clients coming through the clinic every 30 minutes. And so it is a kind of noisy environment, and that alone can cause some confusion. This is the Oregon Health Authority vaccine sequence. This is that protocol, the distribution protocol that we are following. And it's important to note where we are in the vaccine sequence, just to be mindful that there is a prioritization that is given to people based on their amount of exposure, based on their severe illness risk, and then based on their role in maintaining the functioning of society on a daily basis. So the Lincoln County wait list is how people are invited to schedule their appointment. There's currently more than 10,000 people on the list that are currently eligible, that we are working on getting them invites to our vaccine appointments as the vaccines become available. Extra doses that become available at the clinic must go to people that are on the wait list. So every clinic, there are extra doses. Individuals who have appointments do not show for those appointments, and we are able to draw out more vaccine doses out of a vial just with careful drawing practices. So those extra doses must go to people on the wait list in order of that preference. And it's important to note that there are people at each clinic or at a command center behind the clinic who are assigned to filling those appointments for the no-shows and the extra doses. So there's a process for this. Clinic staff cannot call up their family, friends, or neighbors to come in and get those extra doses. So there will be a moment at the end of the clinic where there's a bit of a scramble to make sure that those doses don't get wasted. But we have a process in place. And even though there's this discussion, who are we going to get this vaccine to, it is not within the scope of your work as a clinic staff to call in extra people who are not on the wait list. Clinic staff who do need a vaccine should inform Sally, our volunteer coordinator, before your first clinic so that you can get on her list. Once you work your first clinic, you are then a phase 1A eligible individual so that you get put on that schedule for the vaccine as you come first on that prioritization list in the sequence. So a little bit about our clinics. Most clinics may be from around 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. They're usually split across 2 shifts. So those tend to be quite longer shifts, and so it's good to kind of get an idea of how long that shift will be and whether or not you are able to physically endure the shift. There is a way that you could split the shift with another person, and I will talk about that when we get to where we schedule the appointments, and that's at the very end of the training. Clinics are managed by our operations manager. Her name is Jessie. The medical activities are supervised by a clinical manager who is a clinician, and that manager may change depending on the day of the clinic. We have different people who are rotating in from their positions in various agencies. Clients arrive about 15 minutes before their appointment. If they arrive too early, we ask them to wait in their vehicles. And that's because of the need to ensure safety in front of the building where there's heavy foot traffic and vehicle traffic, as well as to make sure that we keep individuals adequately spaced apart to prevent COVID-19 transmission. Clients move through the clinic in groups of 32 to 42, and they move as a group through stations. So the very first station is screening and check-in, then they move to pre-vaccination waiting area. Then there's the vaccination area, the post-vaccination observation area, and then for first dose clinics only, there's the area where they schedule their second dose appointment. And I will walk through those positions in a layout in just a moment, or those stations in a layout in just a moment. And then we also have wheelchair and walkers available for individuals who need mobility assistant devices, and those are located in the front of the clinic where people are coming in at. This is the org chart. It's just a sample of the org chart, and you can see there's two different groups. On the far right-hand side, there is our operations group in orange. So the operations manager is someone who's on staff with Lincoln County. That's Jessie, and she is overseeing the entire operations of the clinic as a whole. And these are the positions that are not clinical that report directly to Jessie, our operations manager, when they're on site at the clinic and handling clinic issues. And then we have the clinical manager, who's specifically a clinician that is overseeing the medical practices. And so there may be issues that arise on the clinical team that have more to do with finding resources and materials, and those things would still go over to Jessie, who is managing the overall clinic process for Lincoln County. The specific questions that would go to clinical manager would be those about vaccine preparation, side effects, any kind of screening concerns, those more clinical medical questions and issues. This is an overview of the Lincoln County Commons or Fairgrounds based in Newport, just to give you an idea of what the building might look like. It is in Newport. It's east of Highway 101 and just north of Highway 20. This is a layout of that building. So on the left-hand side here, that's the west side of the building facing the ocean. And then on the right-hand side over here, this is the mountain side facing towards the east. There's a back door here. This is where our clinic staff come in. And actually, if I go back up to the slide before this, you'll see here staff parking and entrance, and there's an arrow here to this corner. That's where the staff like break room is. And so we ask that you park around this back area off as far as you can from the entrances to really reserve these spaces closer to the entrances for clients. So for our clinic layout, this is that back door over here. Where our volunteers can come in. There's a sign in, sign out table. There's snacks and personal protective equipment and water bottles in this room. There's also a kitchen, as you can see. Most people are going to come around in this front entrance, is where we prefer to route them. This is our main entrance. It's got the largest intake area. You'll see here that there's also parking in this area, so it becomes really critical to monitor the safety of the foot traffic and the vehicular traffic coming through this area, and that's why we have a lot of positions dedicated to this front space. So individuals will come in here and they will interact first with maybe a parking attendant out here in this parking area who's ensuring the safety, and then they'll encounter the screeners who will do their COVID-19 screenings. make sure that they have an appointment, and then those individuals will come through and go to the check-in table, which is right here. If they don't have their paperwork, they can sit there and fill out their paperwork. As long as their name's on the list and they have their paperwork, then they can go through and wait in the waiting area. And as this group that's in the vaccination area filters out and goes in the back room, these tables will be all cleaned up, sanitized, and then this group in the waiting area will filter in and sit in these different vaccination tables. Someone is standing up at the front, or there's speakers up at the front that will either play a recording of the informed consent, or it will be somebody speaking it live. And then after the informed consent is provided and all the information about the vaccine is provided, the vaccinators will go down the line and they will vaccinate everyone from table to table. They'll do about 10 to 15 people in about 20 to 25 minutes. And then as soon as somebody is vaccinated, they leave their table and they go to the back room back here. And this is where they are waiting for their post-vaccination observation area. This left-hand side is where people who are needing to wait 30 minutes wait. The 30 minutes is for individuals who have a history of severe allergic reactions. And then everyone else is a 15-minute wait, and that is most people. And you can see that that's why this side is larger. As people are waiting, if it's a first dose clinic, they'll come up and they'll get scheduled for their second dose appointment. And we have our EMT here that is going to be looking over the observation area, waiting to see if anybody has any reactions. And then there's an area where they can provide care if anything is needed. This is the image of what the front of our vaccine clinics look like. There's signs that point in directions of where traffic should go and where other parking spots are available at. There's also signs that say that vaccine appointments are required, but individuals will still walk up and ask if they could walk in. And the answer is always no. If they don't have an appointment, they have to go leave the clinic and they need to be on the wait list and then wait for their invite to schedule their appointment. So this is an image of what the front area looks like. This is where the screening and check-in individuals are. You can see here the stacks of what we call VARs, the vaccine administration records are here. A link to that record is given to people when they schedule their appointment through their email, and they can print it and bring it in, or there's copies here and they just sit over on this table over here and fill out the form. Then once their form is complete, they'll go over to the waiting area, which looks like this. And then once that whole group is collected and all of the people from the vaccination area have moved out, then the new group will file into this vaccination area and they will be seated one person at the end of each side of the table. And then after the informed consent is read up at the front of the building, the vaccinator just goes down the line, checks their screening form, assures that they have consent, and then provide the vaccination. And then once the vaccination's been provided, then they can come back to the back room. This is where they'll be sitting to wait for their 15 or their 30-minute observation period. If we do have a situation and someone needs to have emergency medical care, there's a recovery area provided here with some privacy screens. And then if it's a first dose clinic, this is where they will come up to schedule their second dose. And then you can see down here, there's people that are providing data entry on the backhand corner over here. And I'll explain a little bit more about those positions shortly. So that's the end of the first section. And then now we're moving into the section specifically about the clinic positions, the shifts, and the supports that are available. There are two types of positions, credentialed and non-credentialed. So for the credentialed positions, these positions legally require certain medical licenses and certifications. These positions include vaccinators, vaccine pullers, and the emergency medical technician. The staff holding licenses, or these are staff that are holding these specific licenses, and they need to be credentialed either by Lincoln County or by the agency that is sponsoring them, so that the licensure needs to be verified. And then for all others, we have our non-credentialed positions. These are ones that do not require specific medical licenses. These include parking attendants, screeners, check-in positions, the interpreters, though we would prefer certified medical interpreters. We have a limited number of certified medical interpreters in the county, and though we prefer it, we are not able to guarantee it at our clinics. And so we will accept all forms of interpretation for Spanish and English translation, though someone needs to have a background in some medical terminology to be able to adequately translate. There's the clinic flow position, data entry, and schedulers. Staff who don't have medical licenses or have not yet had their licenses credentialed by Lincoln County would be working these non-credentialed positions. One thing to note is that the data entry positions require access to the state's vaccine database. It's called Alert. And so if you sign up for that position, you need to be able to make sure that you have access to that database and are trained in the database and can navigate the database before you commit to a position. Our vaccine coordinator, Sally Edwards, would be the person to talk to about how to get linked up with that database. So this is more specific into the credentialed positions. So we have our clinical manager. That is a restricted position that only individuals who've been selected by previous clinic managers can fill. This individual needs to be someone who has worked the vaccine clinic in that medical area. So they've probably been a vaccinator or a vaccine preparer before, and they've been trained or have shadowed one of our fellow clinical managers just to make sure that they are ready for that position. There's a lot of decision making and troubleshooting that goes on with that position. Then our other credentialed positions include the vaccinator, vaccine preparer, and EMS observer. For the vaccinator, you need to have the licensure certification legally required to administer vaccines. You'd be administering vaccines to 10 to 15 clients every 30 minutes, ensuring the safety protocols are followed, reviewing the client's screening form for any concerns, and then verifying consent. For the vaccine preparer, you must have the legally required licensure needed to prepare vaccines. So that would be a registered nurse, a registered pharmacist, or a certified pharmacist tech. You need to follow the vaccine protocols, which are different for each of the vaccines. We have 3 now that could come into the mix, though most of them are going to be Moderna, and then very few often, or very less often, will have the Pfizer vaccines as well. Right now, our Johnson & Johnson vaccines will be prioritized to groups outside of the mass vaccination clinics. And so it's going to be rare that you might be preparing those in the mass vaccination clinic, at least not regularly. You would need to follow the vaccine preparation protocols, ensure that each dose is properly loaded, prevent dose wasting, and then properly label materials. For the EMS observer, you must be a licensed paramedic, EMT, or ALS RN. This is required for monitoring clients for signs and symptoms of severe allergic reaction and provides immediate emergency response. That position also does some work to direct patient flow. It helps to have somebody in the doorway of that observation area, waving people over and then taking their forms and directing them towards the chairs to wait, or directing them towards the schedulers when the schedulers have an opening. Here's the first slide of our non-credentialed position. So we have our parking attendants that are out in the front and the back of the building in the areas where parking is occurring. They must be able to work outdoors in inclement weather and maintain pedestrian and motor vehicle safety at all times. And so this position would really need to be out in the open, even though it's windy and rainy. We'll still need to be out there and making sure that everything is safe. They must also complete an additional online orientation before signing up for this position, because they're working in relative isolation from the clinic manager and the operations manager. So they would need to have some extra safety protocols for that position. In addition to directing vehicle and foot traffic, they will also need to coordinate with the other station teams and other entry area stations. They'll respond to safety issues immediately and sometimes on their own. They'll direct clients to line up, to wait in their vehicle if they've arrived too early, or to return later if they've arrived really, really early, or return them back to leave and then get on the wait list if they have not been scheduled. For screeners, they will be out in front and they'll welcome clients. They'll provide the health screening, which is a COVID-19 screening. They'll provide a quick intro and orientation to the clinic, identify if interpretation or any mobility resources are needed, and then provide assistance to ensure that they have access to navigate the clinic. This person must be welcoming, but also needs to ensure that the safety and clinic protocols are followed, including making sure that people have appointments and not allowing walk-ins through the door. For check-in, they welcome clients, they verify identity based on their name being on the list that we have for individuals who are scheduled. They confirm that they have an appointment, they provide info and direction, help them fill out the vaccine administration record, the form that they need to have, and then determine again if any additional supports are needed. They'll keep track of any missed, duplicate, or scheduled issues that come up, and that will help us keep track of the vaccine count that we have. One of the biggest challenges of this position is that individuals will come in, they have sworn that they have an appointment, but their name isn't on a list, and that has to be navigated and troubleshot. And fortunately, that position also has our clinical, or our operations manager is also stationed near that position, can help with a lot of that work. They have to be able to adapt quickly to issues that arise with the schedule and the appointments that have been made. We also have a Spanish interpreter. They must be able to provide English-Spanish interpretation, preferably with experience in healthcare and medical care, because the terminology can be pretty technical. They would provide Spanish and English interpretation at all the stations, so they might travel with someone through the clinic. We also welcome additional languages. We are particularly looking for mom speakers to be able to staff the clinic, and so that's another position that even though they may not speak Spanish, they could still sign up for this. It's just listed as an interpreter, though we have a goal to have a Spanish interpreter at every single clinic that we operate. This is the second slide for our non-credentialed positions. So we have our patient and clinic flow position, which is a fast-paced position. It requires someone active and able to multitask. They're moving from the wait area to the vaccination area to the back room area. They are fixing any kind of issues in the patient flow. They're identifying where there's bottlenecks or where there's clustering, and navigating people through those areas and adjusting things across the different stations. They're really helpful for making sure that clients can sit down if they don't need to be standing in a line, and then can help them, call them up to come up to the next place when it's their turn, and that just helps to alleviate some of the strain of getting through the clinic. For data entry, those individuals must have access to the state's vaccine database, which is alert. They also need to be able to interpret lots of variety in handwriting and ensure that accurate information is being entered into the database. They must be able to navigate some issues that arise with discrepancies in information, and then also able to change in vaccine providers. Certain lot numbers are assigned to certain agencies, and they may have to switch to a new agency midway through the day. And so they'll need to be able to navigate those types of more complex and a little bit more rare situations that arise with the data entry. And again, if somebody's interested in this position, they need to contact Sally Edwards, our volunteer coordinator, to get linked into our alert database system. And then we have our schedulers. These are only at the first dose clinic. They'll use Sign Up Genius to schedule clients for their second dose appointment. They'll need to be able to accurately enter names and email addresses and phone numbers into the scheduler in a pretty noisy environment. They'll write the second dose appointment dates and times on the back of the client's CDC immunization card, and then assure sanitation between materials that are passing between clients and staff. So how to prepare before your shift. For any new positions, you should read the job action sheet. There's a job action sheet for every position, and you'll be provided access to them before your shift. Read it to ensure that you're ready for the position and that you're capable to perform the position. Coordinate with Sally, our volunteer coordinator, to shadow the position for 1 hour before you're showing up to work it. And then only sign up for positions that you know you can do and that you're legally eligible to do. And for a first time working a new position, sign up for the morning shift. The morning shifts are an easier start because people are trickling in more slowly at the very beginning, but also because there's a morning briefing that occurs before the clinic starts that really can help with the orientation. If you need your vaccine, inform Sally before your first shift so you can get on the list. If you have a scheduling conflict, alert Sally at least 24 hours before your shift. One missing person can really cause a backup and a ripple effect throughout the whole clinic. And then on the day of, dress warmly with layers. If you're sitting by a door or if you're outside, you're going to be pretty cold. If you are one of the mobile positions, you may warm up throughout the day, and so you might want to have the layers to be able to adjust as needed. Wear comfortable walking shoes. Few positions are seated. There's a lot of time on feet. Hydrate and eat well before coming to the clinic. The clinics are very fast paced, and though we encourage you to be able to take care of yourself, it is difficult to take a break, to step away and then take off your mask and wash your hands and then drink your water. So it's just a little bit of extra work, and it tends to be that we drink a little less in this type of environment. And then be ready just to adapt very quickly and talk to many new people in a pretty noisy environment. This is an example of a job action sheet. So every position has one. They'll break down how you start your shift, what you do during your shift, and then the end of the shift. And then there's an area at the bottom where you can write in any suggestions on improving these positions or any issues that arose. During your shift, you'll wear personal protective equipment, and that is provided for you. They're at the back door where you come in to sign in and sign out. There's a medical grade face mask there for you and face shields that are available. And then if you're in one of the clinical positions, the more clinical level personal protective equipment are over there in the clinical space. Every station has hand sanitizers, and it has wipes so that you can wipe down the materials to make sure everything's sanitary. Make sure you sign in and out of every shift, no exceptions. Attend the staff briefings that are held before and after the clinic. So if you're working a morning shift, you'll attend the briefing that happens before your shift. And then if you are working an afternoon shift, you'll attend the briefing that is happening after the shift. Note, there is no mid-clinic briefing. So if you work the second shift, there is no briefing before that shift to prepare you. You'll be coming in while the clinic is still flowing, and you'll need to be able to just jump right in and pick up where your person that you're replacing leaves off at. And it can be a difficult transition, which is why we recommend starting with the morning shift first. Designate someone on your team to be lead. That will just help with coordination and troubleshooting. That lead person can be the main point of contact then for the clinical or the operations manager. Breaks, make sure you notify your team lead, and you'll need to make sure that the other people on your team will be able to cover for you. Just a reminder, the clinic never stops, and so the flow will continue to move, and we'll want to be able to take that break at a time when we have a little bit more of a dip in the movement, just because it will help us be able to balance and not get behind. And then for meals, if you are working a long shift and need to be able to have lunch, you'll need to bring your own lunch, but there will be bottled water and some shelf-stable snacks that are provided in the break room. This is an example of the equipment and supplies that are provided for a position. This is specifically for the parking attendants, and each position has a different supply kit. It'll have a list of what's included in that supply kit. And then when you finish at the end of the day, just please put everything back and make sure it's nice and orderly for the people who come in with the next day. So the end of the shift, notify your team lead before you're leaving. This is especially for your morning shift. Make sure that your replacement has arrived and train that replacement. Allow them to shadow you for a couple clients, and then have them perform the duty while you shadow them, and then provide them support along the way as they identify the types of questions or confusion they have in the process. Sanitize and organize the materials, note any issues and suggestions on your job action sheet, and provide that to your team lead, who will pass that off to our clinic operations manager, and then sign out before leaving the facility in that back room, just where you came in and signed in at. And the last section is signing up for your shifts. So Sally is our volunteer coordinator. She will email you a link to the Sign Up Genius, which is the application that we use to schedule individuals. The link will go out to the entire staff pool. So everyone who is authorized to work the staff clinic will be provided the link. You'll need to sign up through Sign Up Genius. Only sign up for the positions that you can do legally and physically. Do not forward the scheduling links to others, and do not sign up others. And just a reminder, everyone who works a clinic needs to be authorized by Lincoln County. If they're authorized, they would have received the link already. Double check the dates and times for your shifts before signing up. Report any issues or conflicts to Sally at least 24 hours in advance of your shift. If you're a volunteer in Volgistics, your hours will be logged for you, and then you can request to be removed from the email list at any time if you no longer want to work the clinics. So this is an example of what one of the emails looks like. It'll come from Sally Edwards. It'll have a similar title like this. She uses capitalized letters, vaccine clinic staffing update, just to make sure that we can see it. Any urgent messages will be highlighted up at the top. And then the clinics that currently need staffing are going to be in a table similar to this. And then you'll just click on each link for the clinic you want to work. So look at the date and make sure you're available at those dates. Also, it tells you the location. So these are the ones that are in Newport at the Lincoln County Fairgrounds. There are also sometimes that there's clinics in Lincoln City, or there might be a clinic in Waldport that you may be eligible to work, or there's one at the Samaritan Health Education Center that you might be able to work. Once you click on the link, it'll take you to a web page like this. This is the Sign Up Genius. It will tell you that there's how many shifts there are. So this one in particular has 2 shifts, from 7:30 to 1:30 and 1 to 6:30. And you'll see that there's a 30-minute overlap there for that transition, so that you can make sure your replacement's there and you can train your replacement. And then when you go down just a little bit, this is where you sign up. You'll notice here that this is just the first shift. So this is the 7:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the next shift is in a separate section. So this is the 1 to 7. So you can only sign up for one position for each shift. And so you'll pick the position you might want. If you want to work the morning shift, you'll pick one of these and just click on the little white box. And then if you wanted to work a morning shift and an afternoon shift, you'll do the same thing. So you'll just click the position you want to work. For each of those shifts, you can work 1 shift, or you could work 2 shifts. You could work the same position over 2 shifts, or you could work 2 different shifts if you're adventurous. So, well, 2 different positions across the 2 shifts if you're adventurous. And then once you click these boxes, click submit and sign up. And you're not signed up yet. And then it'll take you to your sign-in page. So you'll put your first name, last name, email, phone number, identify the credentials you have if you're signed up for one of the credentialed positions, your licensure number, the agency you work for or volunteer with. That's also verifying that you're one of our authorized individuals, and we can go through and check the affiliation agreement and make sure you're on it. And then what your job title is, and something that just helps us find out who you are and who you're with. If you want to split a shift because maybe 6 hours is a little bit too much for you, but you could do 3, and you have a buddy who could also do 3, a buddy who's authorized by Lincoln County, and you two could decide that you're going to split that shift. And so you will put your names here. You'll put both of your first names and both your last names here, and that will tell Sally that you guys are going to split the shift. And you might also want to reach out to Sally just to make sure that everything is set for that. And then on your end, you'll just need to work with the buddy to make sure that you guys together have that shift completely covered. And then here is the button that you would click. You are not signed up until you've hit this button. And make sure you get a confirmation email from that submission. And that is the rest of our training. We are so happy that we have a very large pool of people who can staff our public health mass vaccination clinics. And we look forward to seeing you at the clinics.